Welcome to Revre's guide on all of our listing documents. So in this series, we're going to be going through every single one of our listing documents and reviewing each section so that you're fully aware of the information that we require when we're listing your house. So first up today, we're going to be working on the exclusive seller representation agreement. This agreement is for when we are listing your home and doing all of the agent services that come along with that. People generally choose this service when they're not comfortable selling a home themselves, or they don't have the time, or they would like some additional service and guidance when listing their home. So this is the first document in a series of 100 or so. Paperwork is very heavy in real estate if you're not aware, but I'm sure you are. So this is one of the first documents we're going to cover. There's probably about 6 or 7 other ones that we're going to be looking at in this series, but let's start with the biggest one, the exclusive seller representation agreement. So first of all, let's cover each section, and then if you do have any questions, please do not hesitate to email us at info@revre.ca, and we will be more than happy to cover anything that we missed, or if you have any additional questions. So first off, in the first section, we have the brokerage name. So we are Revre, and we have the seller's name. So we generally have 2 lines here for husband and wife situations, or if there's people that have bought a house together. And there's been situations in which this becomes a corporation, or there's more than 2 sellers. We just include them here. So John Smith and Jane Smith are our sellers in this case. These are fictional people. This is not a real document, in case you were wondering. The next section is the property description. So we talk about the land and buildings at a municipal address. In this imaginary document, we have 123 Mickey Mouse Street, Disneyland. But this will be the address that people would be looking up when they want to come and see you on a Google map, for example. So whatever your home address is, this is where it's going to be. We include all of the following goods that are not attached to the land and the buildings. So these are going to be everything that you don't want to take with you when you're leaving the place. These are the things you're going to be leaving behind, such as your refrigerator, your stove, your dishwasher, washer, dryer, etc., and things that you don't like anymore, like a desk that someone gave you or a piece of art that you bought in Cabo that one time. There's going to be the next section that has goods attached to the land that we're going to be taking with us. So these are not going to be staying with the property when we sell it. Generally, we leave this section blank, but if there's things that you do want to take with you, then you bring them into this section. I joke about this, but we are going to be bringing our children, our dog, and potentially a washing machine or a refrigerator that we just bought and want to keep with us. This is totally up to you, but do let us know if that's what you're wanting to do when selling the property and you're not going to be leaving these things behind. Generally, like I said, we leave this section blank. The next section is the legal description of the property. So this is going to be the plan, the block, and the lot for a single family home. For a condominium, there's also going to be a unit number here. We have a condo specific listing document for that. We will also be having a condominium property schedule attached. If it is a condo, that includes things such as your parking stalls, your unit factors, etc. And if it's a country residential property, we also include a schedule with that too. The next section is the one that everybody cares about. This is what we're going to be listing the property for on the MLS. I'm sure you wish you could get $5 billion for your property, but this is an imaginary document. 123 Mickey Mouse Street will definitely be selling for that though. And we also have the proposed possession date. This is when you will be selling the home and transferring possession onto the buyer. Generally, we have this between 15 to 45 days, but it can be literally immediate. It can be upwards of 90 days. It totally depends on what your situation is. We want to be accommodating as much as possible. And sometimes when buyers come in a a purchase agreement, they are going to negotiate on this with you. And we negotiate back and forth to see when it's optimal for both parties. Our agency relationship is described here. It says who we appoint. In this case, it's agent, but it could be one of 100 different people. These are going to be your designated agents when you are selling your property. And these are the people that you're going to be corresponding with. Sometimes there's more than one. Sometimes there's only one. It totally depends on what your situation is and what your relationship is with the agent or agents. If they're no longer registered with us, we will get you another agent if that is your request. If not, the agreement will be void. We also state when the agreement begins and when it ends. Generally, we do 90 days because anything above 90 days on a MLS listing looks a little bit stale, old. We can always review these documents and extend dates if required, but generally we always start with the 90 days. This is totally up to you. However you would like to move forward with this, do let us know. But it does have to be, I believe, a minimum of 60 days to be on the public MLS. With our platform, you can list for as long as you like. Our responsibilities here are outlined, so we're going to be impartial with all dealings with you and other buyers represented by us interested in this property. We make sure that a designated agent represents your and meets your applicable policies and procedures. Our applicable policies and procedures. We supervise a designated agent and make sure that all responsibilities are being met. We haven't decided if we're going to be holding money in trust at Revre. We may, and if that does happen, then this is applicable as well. We give you a copy of the agreement as soon as possible after signing as well, because you need to have this for your records, and we also keep it for our records in our system at the brokerage. We also include, obviously, marketing of the property until a property is sold or this agreement ends. We inform you of all marketing activities so you know what's going on in the background, and you also will be known, we'll also make it known, that if there's any buyers interested in the property and that if there's any offers that come in, any offers that do get presented to us, we must show you, even if they're significantly low, etc. It allows you a time to either agree to an offer, counter it, or outright reject it. We also tell buyers of all material latent defects that affect this property. This is something we'll cover in another section, but it is required that we reveal any material latent defects because these are generally things that are very expensive to fix or are potential problems when a new buyer comes into a property. We help you negotiate favorable terms because obviously as your agent, we owe you the duty to work for you and negotiate for you because we want you to be happy. We help you prepare and comply with all contracts that are involved in selling a property. So if there's any purchase agreements or anything like that, we always review them with you to make sure that you know what is going on and what's in the document. I already covered the presentable offers, but we also tell you all relevant facts about a transaction. So at Revre, what we're really striving towards is to provide you with consistent market updates within your area that are relevant to you. So if there's a property for sale that's just down the street from you, we need you to know about it. And if there's other properties that have sold in your neighborhood that are similar style, then those become relevant to you because perhaps we can look at adjusting a listing depending on what's going on with the market, because the market is king when it comes to selling real estate. The next section, we talk about all the services that we're going to be providing you. So obviously we're going to be doing the MLS system, and it must be for a minimum duration of 60 days. And we also have to provide a compensation for cooperating brokers for the sale of the property. It has to be on there, and also not exclude any licensed industry member from acting as a cooperating broker. So we just make sure that everybody sees listings on the MLS and everybody's able to show them, and that they're on there for a minimum of 60 days. Your request will be different for each situation, But these are generally the services that we do provide you, A, B, C, and D. So we provide you with a lockbox that will be accessible to other agents when they're showing your property. So other people are going to have access to your home. People sometimes ask us that question, well, how does my home get shown? You have a key box on your front door with a key or a code that allows people access to your home, and this is how it is done. B, we online market your property. So we do this on multiple social media channels, obviously on the MLS, on our personal platform, Revre.ca. We use Facebook, Instagram, sometimes LinkedIn, potentially YouTube. Depending on what you want, we include them in there. So we go through all of these different channels and make sure that you're getting as much exposure as possible for your property. We do sometimes do photos or other agreed upon services. So sometimes we are going to be doing online websites for you specific to your property, etc. These are all services that we discuss when we're going to list your home, and we agree upon them at the time of listing. And we also provide you with a beautiful for sale sign, which you will be very proud of course. This for sale sign is always on your front lawn, showing people that are walking by or driving by that, hey, this house is for sale. Come take a look at it if they're interested. Now we go over your responsibilities in this agreement. So we need you to provide us with a real property report that shows current state of improvements on the property. So this is generally going to be everything that's inside your property, including the fence, any updates that you've done, perhaps a deck or a garage or anything like that, and one of 100 different things. We'll discuss this in more detail, but this is needed when we're selling a property because we need the party that's coming in to know what is actually part of our property, and also what complies with surveyors' standards of practice. So if your fence, for example, was done without a permit, or your deck was done without a permit and is above X feet, I can't remember exactly what it is, I believe it's 3 feet, then we need to have this in essentially a new real property report drafted to accommodate for all these changes. I need to insure the property and its contents against loss of damage due to any causes that are normally insured upon against. So, for example, if your property is vacant, you do have to make sure that you either have insurance or make sure that you waive any issues with people coming in and doing things. All agents are generally very respectful when going into other people's homes, but this is just kind of a security clause to make sure that in case something accidentally breaks or something like that, that you have property means of recourse. We would like to communicate and cooperate with us as much as possible because everything is always better when there's open channels of communication. And this allows us to kind of keep everybody in the loop, both us as your agent and yourself as our client. Let us know the property's condition, the status, or any title changes that are made on it. Tell us about any inquiries that you make or receive about the sale of the property, and determine whether the sale of the property is subject to GST. So let us know if it does include GST. Generally, that is for brand new properties. When you're reselling a property, generally it's not subject to GST, but we need to make double sure when we're selling it. Determine and tell us if you have enough money left over for the sale of the property to cover payment of a mortgage, balance, any other obligations you may have to pay out for the sale of the money. For the sale, with money. And during this agreement and 14 days after this agreement, just give us any copies of any offers you make or receive for the sale of the property, unless you sign a representation agreement with another brokerage. Now, warranties representations. These are important because we need to know you have the authority to sell the property. So you're on title. It is your property and you are selling it. That no one else has any legal right to any attached or unattached goods. That you have told us about all third-party rights to the property. And all information you give us is true to the best of your knowledge. You warrant to the best of your knowledge the following are also true. land buildings are currently being used according to municipal bylaws. So if it's a residential property, people are living in it, doing their day-to-day activities, etc. Buildings and land improvements are entirely on the land and not on any public easement, right-of-way, or neighboring lands, like your neighbor's lawn or something like that. Just making sure that that is up to snuff. With your real property report, this is going to help us determine this. We need to know the location of buildings and improvements that, and we need to know that they meet municipal bylaws or regulations. The land and buildings are also being currently used according to the location of the buildings and land improvements, if there's any restrictive covenants, so that they meet these restrictive covenants. Sometimes this is totally irrelevant, but if you're in a certain area, sometimes there's restrictive covenants on how buildings and land can be used. And also, if you're a non-resident of Canada, under the Income Tax Act. So let us know if you're a non-resident so that we have that ability to provide further guidance. The next section is for Dower Consent. So if you're a married couple and only one person is on title and you both have lived on the property at any time during your marriage, then dower rights may apply. We determine that with you. If both people are on title, then this is not generally relevant because both people are going to be on this agreement. But if only one person owns the property, but both have resided at a single time during marriage, this may apply. We have to make sure that we can determine that. We talk about conflicts of interest because they do sometimes arise when we have, for example, a buyer client that's looking at a property. Looking at a property is not a conflict of interest, but when they do make offers on properties that we're both representing the seller and the buyer, then there can be conflicts of interest. We can remedy this via getting another agent into the procedure. We can also have a facilitation of transaction agreement put into place in which we become pretty much just middlemen. We make sure the transaction is going smoothly for both parties. We don't provide any party with advice that we don't give other parties. So, well, essentially we don't provide any advice to either party in that situation. And we just make sure that everybody's satisfied with the transaction. So we just become a channel of communication between buyer and seller. And this helps us to get a transaction through. Our fee and limits on payments. So if we're doing a full listing agreement with you, we're going to only be charging you 1% of the final sale price. What we offer to any buyer agent that comes in and helps somebody else purchase a property is negotiable. We determine that based on what your needs are, and we put it in here, what we will offer in 10.2. Both of these fees include GST, just so you're aware of that. The next section just states when you will pay our agreement or pay our fee, as long as the agreement is in effect, and if the property goes legally sold, which essentially means that all conditions are waived on a purchase, and the property is legally sold, then we do get paid. Sometimes what has happened in the past, I've experienced once actually, is that somebody put an offer onto a place, the offer was accepted, conditions were removed, and it was legally sold, but they weren't able to get financing for development, and they actually walked away from the sale of the property. So what happens here is that commissions are still paid out to the listing agent and to you as well. So if there's a deposit on a property, that deposit is generally sacrificed in this situation. We usually cross this bridge when we get there because it doesn't happen all that often, but it definitely can happen. What else do we have here? A lot of other legal speak, but what we do include here is in 10.7 that if you change your mind in selling a property, and you have to tell us in writing, and if the agreement is terminated before the 90 days or however long our agreement is for, we charge reasonable expenses of about $299. Reason being is because it costs us that much to list a property, to get a sign up, and to provide you with the services in listing. Other than that, we obviously collect personal and confidential information. So we're not going to be selling it, transmitting it anywhere that you may be marketed to or anything like that. It stays on premises with our brokerage, and we make sure that you are not compromised with this data that we collect from you. And finally, in section 14, property information notices and permits, we have to talk to you about material latent defects in the property or any defects that would be expensive to fix. In a perfect world, these checkboxes are going to be no, but we understand that we don't live in a perfect world and there's sometimes issues with properties. These issues do need to be disclosed legally to protect you. So if there's, for example, a foundational crack, it needs to be known by whoever's coming in. And if it's remedied to the extent that it's no longer an issue, then it doesn't have to be disclosed, but it must be remedied to the full extent. And the underlying issues have to be fixed as well. So we also include if you've received any government or local authority notices on the property. So if there's any issues with, for example, noxious weed control, or you haven't been shoveling your walks or anything like this, this has to be included here. And you have to know about any lack of permits that are used, that were used in development of the property. So if there was any issues like this, such as there's a basement development without a permit or a deck without a permit, fencing, etc., we need to know about this so that we are able to provide you with advice. We talk about an early end to the agreement. So if you've had it completed a sale of the property, that obviously will end the agreement between us, because the agreement is until a property is sold or it expires. Other than that, pretty much everything else is a lot of legal speak, and I expect you to review it. Please do ask me any questions that you may have throughout the document. We have contact information here, so this is going to be our seller information. Both John and Jane are going to be in here. And then we have our brokerage and brokerage representative, that will be in here. Here we have room for our signatures. So we get your autographs here. We date the document, and I also give my beautiful autograph. And finally, we initial here and date it. And that is the end of the first document. I know it was a little bit tedious to go through, but we must review these documents with you just so that you're fully aware of everything that they entail. I would like you to review the document to read it through and just ask me any questions you may have on it. But having a nice overview of this document is pretty paramount in helping people get through a transaction when they're listing their home. We're going to talk about, in our next video, we're going to talk about the probably the condo property schedule. And we're going to go into a little bit more depth of when you're selling a condo, what is needed on that. Thank you very much for watching, and we will look for you in the next video. Thank you very much, and take care.